Welcome everybody to Grablives podcast. And just to start off with our disclaimer, everything we say and do does not reflect the City of Los Angeles Fire Department. Just to start off as well with our sponsor and team member, Frontline Behavioral Wellness. They offer therapeutic measures of treating first responders and innovative ways of how they can treat PTSD and depression, anxiety, cognitive behavioral disorders, and they are wanting to treat first responders. So if you know someone who needs help, is in the Orange County or LA County area, reach out to them. They really help and put an emphasis on this program and how it's designed to help people. So if you're also interested, you can go to acerahealth.com, and Acera is their sister company, and you can check out all the stuff they have to offer and ways that insurance can cover treatment as well. And on top of that, they have a hotline, of which is a 24/7 confidential phone number. You can reach out. This is designed for specifically for first responders. And that number is 661-877-7241. So go ahead and check that out. Today's episode is a really special episode. And it's going to be focused on Kambo, the medicine of the great revealer of what it's been referred to as. And this medicine changed my life. And I cannot talk about it more. I've talked about it on other podcast episodes, but I haven't gone to an in-depth detail of what Kambo is. So today we're going to do that. And I just want everyone to be open to this phenomenal medicine that has come to the surface that has been healing people and treating PTSD. This medicine could be it. So today I have a guest with Wolf, who is my mentor, friend, brother, and he's the one who trained me to become a practitioner to serve this beautiful medicine that's been helping so many different people with so many biological, mental, and emotional disorders. So stay tuned for this episode. It's really awesome to hear the details of how this medicine can affect humanity. And also, this could be the forerunner for first responders in treating PTSD and all the biological stuff we deal with. So stay tuned, and thank you for listening. All right, everyone, welcome. This episode is going to be really putting an emphasis on the medicine of Kambo. And I've talked about it before in other podcasts, and I really feel that doing an episode on Kambo itself and talking about the interconnections of this medicine, how it's really changing people's lives. So going into what Kambo is, I have my really good friend, mentor, brother with me today, Wolf Purnananada Jowers. And Wolf is a master practitioner in Kambo, and we talked about, really getting the message out about Kambo and the stuff we've seen in serving this medicine has been phenomenal. I mean, we've seen so many healing being done with this medicine. And before we get started, I am going to go and share, my story with Kambo and how I came across this path and the healing it's done for me and it's provided. So I'm also a Kambo practitioner, and after my own struggle with my mental health, emotional health, and physical health, I saw a path to use this medicine to help people who are really suffering and really needing help. So the story goes, when I was at work, I had a concussion and I got transported to Cedar Sinai, was off injury at home, and struggling tremendously. And as far as traumatic brain injury goes, this has been referred to as a silent epidemic of an injury. And looking into the injury, it's just really hard to treat. When you get a concussion, you have these really, really bizarre symptoms. And depending on the concussion for each person who has issues with TBI or traumatic brain injury, the symptoms can be across the board, dependent on how or where you hit your head. So for me, I hit my head on my left temporal lobe, which is one of the softest areas you could hit on your head. So as I was at home, I experienced so many different symptoms that left me really depressed. And at the time I was drinking, and I had realized, like, when I was off, I had to stop drinking because it was affecting my symptoms with my concussion as well. So as I was working through my injury, I really had a hard time. I was in a really, really dark place with myself with depression, and I was extremely anxious, never dealt with anxiety my entire life. And I just was in a state of panic all the time. And as I was working through that, I went through a really dark place with suicide ideation. So I just wanted to end it. It was too much for me. I was so anxious, I couldn't even walk to the store. It was that intense for me. So prior to this, I was with my girlfriend, Haley, who had mentioned to me about Kambo. And she had worked with it once, and it was helping her. And the story goes with her is that she has a mentor who learned about Kambo as well. And the woman who introduced them was dealing with issues with PCOS. And her story is that she was not intending to treat PCOS with Kambo. She actually was doing Kambo to enhance her physical body, her emotional body. And in the end, she was visiting a doctor, found out like her PCOS readings were immaculate, to where the doctor was like, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. And she's like, I'm just doing Kambo. And it was just an epic way of seeing how fascinating this medicine heals the body. So going into that, Haley was telling me to go do Kambo, and I told her I don't want to do it. So eventually I had a really bad panic attack, and I was so desperate that I ended up doing Kambo, and that's where I met Wolf. And as I worked through the medicine over about 8 to 10 sessions, Kambo began to heal my physical body and reverse all my symptoms I had with traumatic brain injury. On top of that, I was able to go into some of the emotional blockages I carried, and I was able to find solace within myself with this beautiful medicine. So we're going to talk a little bit about the details on how Kambo works, and just be really open to listen to what this medicine has to offer. It's a really bizarre experience, and in the end, like, by it being bizarre, it works. So I trust this medicine fully by the things I've seen and watched, how it's transformed people's lives, where they have a completely 180 direction in their life after receiving Kambo and being served. So that being said, I'm going to introduce Wolf here, and he's going to talk a little bit about like his process and how he came across Kambo as well, and where he's at in his field of work.
Great. Happy day. It's always a blessing to be here with you, Brother John, and support this process. You know, it's incredible what you're doing with this incredible podcast, and really, you know, supporting first responders and anyone else who's really connected to this podcast. I've had many clients and friends tune into what you're offering. It's really helped them in so many levels, whether first responders or not. And so just the opportunity, you know, I love the name of Grablives. You're really helping people support themselves and coming back into their essence and their true power. And Kambo is an empowering medicine. You know, it really empowers you to step back into your fullness. And when I say fullness, I mean the power of your being, the gifts and talents you bring to this world, a full connection to your physical body, mental body, energetic body, and emotional body, really empower yourself to come into your true essence, or who you are. So it's an honor to be here and support this process. So thank you for the invite.
Of course, man. So now, how did you come across Kambo, and what was your first experience, when you were realizing, what this is and the caliber of how it's able to help just the human body biologically?
Yeah. So, as you know, and I think maybe some listeners know this as well, but my background was actually sports medicine for 14 years. And I got a message at some point in time in that process to start working with the natural medicines of the planet. And so I shifted into natural medicine, went back into school for naturopathic studies, and that shifted quickly into more of these alternative methods of medicine, and ranging from all different types of the medicines. And so I've been working with natural medicines for almost 12 years now. And about 6 years ago, my mom passed away. And 2 months later, I had the first opportunity to sit with Kambo up in Oregon, where I live. And had a beautiful process with Kambo, and it felt amazing. And definitely not the process of, but afterwards, it felt incredible. And 2 nights later, my mom came to me in a dream. And she looked at me and she looked down. She looked at me and she looked down. She looked at me and she looked down. When I looked down, there was a frog at my feet. And I knew in that moment in the dream that I needed to start investigating this medicine to discover what it's all about. And so I went on a year-long experience and exploratory experience with Kambo to discover it. Work with multiple practitioners, ranging in the Northwest, to just discover more about this medicine and learn more from it. And then at that time, I realized there was the ability to become a practitioner and become trained on how to serve this medicine. So I was in contact with Kambo International and began to contact them and go through the process of becoming a practitioner. And in that, I've gone through the different ranks and routes or whatever it takes to now be licensed, certified as a master practitioner with Kambo, sponsored by Kambo International in the realm of being able to assist in different trainings and certifications to help others serve this medicine. And it's just been a really, really incredible journey, and it's led me to different places, everything from traveling different parts of the country and just serving Kambo and supporting and offering certifications and working with extreme medical ailments. And so, I just want to make sure that, I state on here that anything I say is not a claim for Kambo. It's what we've experienced and what we've seen based on offering this incredible medicine. And so far, we've seen Kambo overcome AIDS, HIV, STDs, autoimmune diseases, stage 4 cancer, Lyme disease, Alzheimer's, and dementia so far. And so, as well as brain trauma and different things we've seen, but I would say if I had to label some categories, that'd be the categories that I'll put it out to. And from a science perspective, if anybody you love more the science of things, this is not just some Amazonian medicine that just does these miraculous things, and really understand what Kambo is. And Kambo comes from the green monkey tree frog, and it's a secretion off the back. And to gather the medicine, the frog is not harmed at all. It's very sacred in the way the tribes gather the medicine. In fact, they believe that the frog is part of creation, part of the earth, part of Pachamama, Mother Earth. And so it's held in the realm of as much as they would hold a being of God, a being of source, a being of creation. And so it's done in a very sacred way. And from the medicine of Kambo, again, science level, it's made of 11 bioactive peptides. A peptide is that molecule between amino acid going into a protein in our systems. And so Kambo's molecule structure matches your saliva. And so when it comes in the body welcomes it very quickly. And it feels like it's something that's already part of the system. It doesn't see it as a foreign substance. So normally when you take anything like a pharmaceutical or anything you put in your body, your cells are very protective of themselves to keep their health. With Kambo's molecule structure, your cells open up to it. And because it feels like it's something that's already part of the system. And Kambo comes into your cells and it pulls all the bad bacteria, all the PTSD, all the trauma, all the trapped emotions, limited belief systems, like whatever the cells are holding, it pulls it out. It puts good bacteria back in the cell, and then it reseals the cell. But it goes through the entire body in 40 minutes. And so it is an intense process. There's also 3 neuropeptides that begin to recalibrate the entire nervous system in that 40 minutes. So, maybe some responders or people listening to this podcast will resonate with this or not, but in my age group, there used to be movies called Superman, Superwoman, and they would go into a phone booth, and within a 3-second moment, they would change into their superhuman costume and come back out. And like, that's really what Kambo is. The fact that the rapid rate of transformation that it offers in the 40 minutes of process you have with the medicine compared to cleaning your cells and recalibrating your nervous system is a very rapid transformational process in a very small time frame. And so the process is not always pleasant, but the amount of impact, the benefits you're receiving in that 40 minutes is completely outweighed with the 20 minutes or 30 minutes of discomfort that you go through in the process. And, what we've seen with this is just really incredible. As you talked about the women with PCOS, I've also known, just to give you a little background for the tribes, as we know, almost every tribe that we know of in the Amazon serves Kambo. Not all of them, but most do. They have a reference of it. And they call it the vaccine of the forest. And not a, but the. And they use it to overcome malaria, venomous snake bites. The women in the tribes use it to increase sexual attraction. They use it to have any challenges with pregnancies. They do it to, there's so many reasons of why they do it. But the main reason is what they call panema, which is what they might call stuck energy in their bodies. And so there's so many reasons why they use it. They give it to starting at children at 3 or 4 years old, almost as a monthly cleansing for the system, And, Kambo is not looking for anything of these medical ailments that I mentioned, but what it's doing is looking for the imbalances. And whether the imbalance is emotional, mental, energetic, or physical, Kambo is going after that imbalance. And we call Kambo conscious Kambo for a reason. It has a consciousness to it, meaning the fact that it's a smart medicine. Meaning when it comes in the system, it knows exactly what it's looking for. It's looking for the imbalance. And so when it comes to the gender of the divine feminine, if there's anyone who has any kind of imbalances in the reproductive systems, I know a woman who burst a cyst on Kambo that had a cyst on her ovaries. And so it's really incredible around what it does in recalibrating reproductive organs for women and everything that it does. Got to remember that the great creator, whatever name you give to that, only creates from a balanced state. So as a divine feminine who can create life, if there's anything imbalanced in that process as far as creating anything in that area of your body, it's also connected to the second chakra is where your creativity flows from. Whether you want to create a business, a dance, a song, a child, all of it comes from the same area. And when you create, it needs to create from a balanced state. So if there's anything imbalanced in that, that's where Kambo goes after. So hence, in the reference of creating a life and the reproductive organs of a woman, it's going to go after the imbalances that it's going to help rebalance that state. And as you know for yourself, anything, if there's an imbalance in your mental body or your physical body, it's going to go after the imbalance. And so that's why we've seen such a shift in all these different medical ailments, is because usually those medical ailments are created from an imbalance. It could be a physical imbalance creating from emotional imbalance, but there's a connection. In the realm of naturopathic medicine, they always look from the balanced state. Like, what is the underlying cause? If you have a physical ailment, there might be an emotional cause under that, a mental cause under that. There's always an underlying cause behind the symptoms. It's not always the symptom. In sports medicine, if somebody has a knee injury, most of the time, 90% of the time, it's not the knee. It's the imbalance of the ankle and the hip and how they're relating to each other, based on how the joints move. Your ankle is a mobile joint, your hip is a mobile joint, your knee is a stable joint. And so if your hip or your ankle is locked and it's not being a mobile joint, then the knee has to take on the mobility, and there comes a knee injury. So in that understanding, if people are looking more into themselves, just know there's always an underlying cause from what might be showing up the symptoms in the body. And the symptoms are a communication. They're talking to you. It's not actually a symptom. And, there's other types of medicine practices on the planet that only look at the symptom, and they only go after it, or they isolate it into just a physical symptom, compared to recognizing the whole system as one operating unit that has these multiple components. And a lot of times there's a relationship between multiple things in the being that are happening, between the relationship of the physical body, emotional body, energetic body, and mental body, and how they relate. And so the beautiful thing about Kambo being a conscious medicine is that it looks at that whole structure of your being and goes after that. With the neuropeptides, one of them is what they call delmorphin, and it's a peptide of morphine, not the opiate, but the peptide. And if somebody comes into Kambo with, say, chronic knee pain or chronic back pain, they're probably going to walk out of Kambo with not having it anymore, not because it numbed it, but because the delmorphin peptide recalibrated how those nerve receptors are communicating. And you're having pain because those nerve receptors aren't having a full communication. And so the delmorphin in Kambo reprograms that and recalibrates that. And I'll give you some examples. One of the peptides in Kambo specifically goes after HIV and AIDS. One of the peptides in Kambo specifically goes after anything candida or overgrowth in the body. One peptide actually goes after anything involving cancer. And so what's even more amazing about that is that the peptides of Kambo, one peptide elevates your system in the beginning, one peptide calms you down at the end. It's completely designed from A to Z, almost like a domino effect. And, giving credit to a great creator and reference to whatever people want to have for that, God, source, whatever that reference for somebody is, that's who made Kambo, not man. And so this medicine has everything we need in it and everything that can help our systems live from a balanced state. And we've seen it over and over and over and over and over again. I know the people you've served. I know the many people I've served over the past 6 years. I serve this medicine full time. It's what I do. And so the amount of different extreme medical ailments I worked with, everything from stage 4 cancer to Lyme disease to dementia to all these different things, and watching it be reversed or shift or have some positive impact on somebody's healing or clearing or rebalancing from that. I've seen a woman who's 92 with dementia, come back into her body and teaching her kids ballet when I leave her home. When she, before I got there, every 20 minutes she wanted to know who I was. It's just really, really powerful. I've seen Lyme's clear in 2 sessions where somebody's actually tested negative, and supposedly, in the other areas of medicine practices, like if you have Lyme's, it's never going to go. And I've seen STDs clear in 7 sessions. So, it's not about the rate of sessions, but the fact that these things can be cleared out of the system when there is a belief system in other medicine practices that they can never actually be gone. And so it's just amazing to see what impacts Kambo can do for somebody. At the same time, it can be a challenging process sometimes, in the first 5 attempts. So first of all, with Kambo, you receive Kambo through your skin system. It goes into the lymphatic system through the epidermis layer of the skin. So we need to take like an incense stick and we create a little burn on the skin, like a marker dot. And it's almost like a sunburn. So we're just taking the first layer of skin off. It's not a brand or a sear. We're just taking the first layer of skin off. And then we put the medicine on. It's very sinewy, very almost like rubber cement, the size of like a lentil or like a BB. And we put the medicine on the burn. And it gets within 60 seconds, it's in the body. The first 5 or 10 minutes, you get really hot, you get really warm. There's a peptide that elevates your blood pressure intently to pull the medicine really quickly. So you get flush, you feel your heart rate come up, you feel everything elevate. And you feel that for about 5 or 10 minutes. Then all of a sudden you feel the medicine, the heat go away. And then it feels like somebody's pouring like honey or maple syrup on top of your head. And you begin to feel it start coming down, start cleansing the cells from the top down. Now, before that happens with Kambo, you first have to drink, a liter and a half of water. So you have water sitting in your stomach. And as the medicine begins to come down like that honey and begin to cleanse all the cells, that second phase is the I don't feel good phase. And you might start feeling nauseous. You might start feeling really tired. It's going to feel like almost like having the flu. And it's pushing all the toxins at a rapid rate to that water that's sitting in your belly. And that's going to happen about 10, 15 minutes. And then all of a sudden there's a peptide in Kambo that begins to contract your gastric acids. And your face stomach start to pump. And then when you're ready, you're going to open your mouth and you're going to purge those toxins out. And now the purge could happen 4 different ways. It could be orally, could be number 2, could be a great sweat, it could be a great cry, but you're going to have some kind of release. And for those of you who are like, oh, number 2, but it's not instant. It's like being at the movies. And you got to get up and you go to the bathroom and you get to go to the bathroom. So the body communicates to you. And so you go through that process, you drink a little more water. The medicine's on for 40 minutes. You have a really beautiful process, and the actual purging is not like throwing up, like from alcohol or food poisoning. It's more like you feel your stomach pump, like a water pump, and it pumps, and the toxins come out. And every time you purge, it feels better. Like you feel something out of your system releasing it doesn't serve you anymore. And after about 10 minutes of that or so, your system begins to calm down. It's only on again for 40 minutes, and there's a peptide that calms your system at the very end, which is really beautiful. And at that 40 minutes, you wipe it off and you lay down. And you lay down could be for 10 minutes, and you wake up and say, I feel amazing. Could be down for an hour and a half and be snoring, whatever you need. But the system's going to recalibrate after that 40 minutes, and you rest, and then you get up and you're going to be hungry. Kambo loves food. And so we serve some beautiful organic food and different things, and some nourishing tea to kind of calm the system. Not sacred tea, but more like some licorice or ginger or turmeric or something to help the system calm, and that's your process. And so it's really beautiful in the way that it works, and just what we've seen, and I know as well as you have heard many testimonies that people come in with one thing and it helps with something else. I've seen a 7-year-old woman who was on blood pressure medication for 30 years, only came to Kambo because her son influenced her. And when she came out of Kambo, she didn't feel called to take her medication anymore. Had a doctor appointment 3 days later, and her blood pressure was extremely balanced. Didn't need the medication. And she started hiking 5 miles a day at 70 years old. And so just this empowerment of what this medicine does. And I've known athletes who couldn't run a mile because they had mono, and now they did Kambo, and now they're doing ultra marathons. I mean, the impact. I also know some other professional, what do you call that? MMA fighters that are working with Kambo to elevate their being and how they operate, not for the sport, but just more for just having clarity of who they are, off season. So it's just this medicine is not for just people with medical ailments. It can be for anybody. I do prefer just preventative work, and I'm happy to say that I'm approaching my 47th birthday, and I've had a naturopath I've been working with for a couple of years, and he has amazing sense where you go into his office and he pricks your blood and looks at your blood under the microscope with you there and tells you what he sees in your blood. And when I first went in a couple of years ago, he says, when usually what happens, they prick your blood, they put it on a slide and put it on the microscope, and usually your blood kind of gets stunned from coming out of your body, touching the oxygen, and being in the world. And my blood didn't skip a beat. And he referenced the health of my blood. He's like, well, this is from you doing Kambo, And so it doesn't have to be a medical ailment. You don't have to come to Kambo in crisis, and then that's what we used to see with Kambo is people have gotten to a point where they tried everything else and it didn't work or make the impact they wanted it to. And so then they finally decide, I'm going to try that frog thing. And they come and something happens, I'm not saying Kambo's the magic bullet either, but I'm saying that I've served at least over 1,500 ceremonies, and I've never had one person regret doing it. Now everybody's liked it, but no one's ever regretted doing it, and everybody comes back because the amount of benefits they receive from the beautiful process calls them back, And so anybody who's on the fence about that out there, I would highly get into a conversation with a practitioner just to talk about it and get some more clarity and information on what it's about to help them with their process.
Did you guys get all that? Yeah. I mean, so, Wolf kind of went through it rapidly on just the process and like the peptides and the science behind it. And we're going to go a little more into it on this episode because there's much more. And the theme we're seeing as practitioners, and this comes across the board with all practitioners serving this medicine, is that we're seeing there is an intelligence to Kambo that is beyond our understanding besides these peptides. And we have to recognize that with an intelligent system like this, they tried to synthesize each peptide separately inside of a lab, and they couldn't. To put them all together, it just wasn't working. So it's been recognized by pharmaceutical companies to try to get these peptides to use them because they work so well. But there's something divine about this frog that's hanging out inside the rainforest that's just chilling with this secretion on its back that holds all of this. And so if we're, recognizing that this sacred frog holds all these peptides to heal people and bring just this balanced lifestyle, we have to honor that. And just to go into like a lot of this too, it's like you're looking at this and you're seeing it's gross. Like, well, hey, you got to throw up in a bucket. But in the end, it's almost humorous how it takes a lifetime of suffering to get you on your knees to be throwing up and sitting in your own filth to find healing. And I find that to be a paradox and just a funny way that nature is providing a way for us to heal. So one of the things that you talked about, Wolf, was Candida. And I know Candida is a precursor for so many symptoms that it's creating in the body that people, say they have autoimmune diseases, they have inflammation, they have poor sleep. Candida is a huge factor in which Kambo can go in and extract it from your body. And just to get a reference of Candida, if no one knows what Candida is a fungal overgrowth in your gut, and it can spread throughout your entire body. And I'm still learning about Candida and how intense it can cause a variety of health problems for so many people. The cool part is that this peptide that's in Kambo can pull that out and goes into the Candida to try to pull it out piece by piece. The thing about Candida is that it's like a weed that's been built from processed foods. And to understand what that comes from, it comes from a lot of the, basically we're poisoned by the government with the food that we eat. It's been, all of our crops have been sprayed with glyphosates and pesticides. So the soil of which the crops have been built is now poisoning our bodies to where you're eating processed foods. It's causing Candida in the gut. So I highly recommend, if you want to just, not do Kambo, but start with your own health, look into processed foods and understand that you're basically you're increasing this Candida overgrowth in your body. So you can have some variety of symptoms that are coming up from just this. So the thing with Candida as well is that when you have PTS, or post-traumatic stress, or post-traumatic stress injury, there is a connection to Candida in the body from post-traumatic stress. When your body's in a high traumatic stress state, it begins to build more Candida in your body. And this has been proven. I came across this when I did a organic acid test for myself for my traumatic brain injury, and also realizing I have had post-traumatic stress from my career. And it was showing that I have this Candida overgrowth in my body that was causing various of symptoms. The thing about Candida too is it's stubborn. It's really hard to get rid of. So, you could take like antifungal medication and it's still not going to get rid of it. Mm-hmm. It can get rid of portions of it, but like I said, it's a weed. So if you don't get it at the root, then you're going to still have issues. And so the thing about this too is that Candida has these receptors that gives you cravings for the foods that it feeds. So it'll give you cravings for sugar. It'll give you cravings for all the processed, chips or whatever you're eating. It's going to want to have you crave those things, so it feeds it. So it's like this nasty monster inside your body. So as far as Candida goes, that's a whole nother ball game on what the main issue is for health. And I know as far as first responders go, we don't have the best diet per se in the firehouse. And I really took it upon myself to make an effort in my gut health and learn more about my gut health, and realizing like my gut is so important to my immune system, to my inflammatory system, and to the way I operate mentally. So the cool part about this is you can make a change directly just by changing your diet and removing all processed foods. When you do Kambo, the cool part about this too is like when you come into a balanced state, what it does is like you start to change things in your diet. So when you leave doing Kambo, like you'll start eating the old foods you ate prior to Kambo, and then it just doesn't resonate with you. Like let's say you ate the same bag of chips, let's say hot Cheetos. I ate hot Cheetos as a kid my entire life. And after Kambo, I don't desire any of that stuff any longer. I put it in my body and I get this just yuck feeling, because Kambo puts you in this state of feeling so vital. And when you put things into the system again, there's just this direct response to like your system doesn't want it. That's why it's also really, really good for addiction. And as far as addiction goes, on all fronts, Kambo's a great medicine for addiction. When I was working through my own issues with my traumatic brain injury, after doing Kambo, I had no desire to drink alcohol anymore. And I've been sober for about 2 years now, where I don't touch alcohol any longer. And if I'm at a party or something, I'm like, hey, let me just have like a nice glass of wine or whatever. I put it in my system and I just don't desire it. I don't know why. It's just this thing when you're resonating within Kambo, you feel as if you're more in tune to the physical body now. And this connection you're building after Kambo, it's really a direct connection to like almost everything that's bad for you. So that's the cool part about Kambo too. And I know you're working with a doctor over in Hawaii who treats addiction with Kambo as well. So no, like I've treated a lot of people with addiction, and it's not an easy process. You're going to have to go into what's underneath too, because the addiction is not the disease. It's usually the trauma that makes you want to feel good that you choose addiction to numb it with. So when you're going into that part, that's when Kambo does the real work, because you're able to go into this traumatic response, the deep emotional wound, and Kambo will bring you to that space of understanding what that wound is. And that's why this manifestation of healing really takes place. So, Wolf, I'd love for you to kind of talk about kind of like the tribes and, their reverence for Kambo and, where we get the medicine from and how it's really impacted this relationship with Kambo International, who we work with, who provides the medicine to us, and so forth.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. A couple points I want to come back to what you just referenced, just in testimonies. In fact, a couple weeks ago, I worked with a woman who had systemic candida. Now, candida is actually a benefit for our bodies for proportion. Candida actually helps filter out the metals in our system. It's the overgrowth that causes all the problems. And this woman had systemic candida. I mean, it was in her face. It was in her eyes. It would look like she was swollen, all over her system. And she came for Kambo to work with it. She had gone all the different routes. They had given her exactly the fungal prescriptions, and it didn't make an impact at all. In fact, it put her in the hospital. And so she with some influence from her mother, she decided to come sit with Kambo. And I put 1 point of Kambo on her just as a test point in the beginning, and it just overtook her system, where she just like blew up, and we couldn't put any more medicine on her because it instantly like went after the candida at a very kind of aggressive way. And her first process with Kambo, she didn't know what to expect, so it came on really strong for her. 1 point, by the way. For those of you out there listening, when we serve Kambo, people usually start with a range between 3 and 7, or some kind of range around the medicine. She had 1 point on, and she had a really big process from it. And I thought she was going to be somebody who was like, I'm never doing this again, because we hear that sometimes, but people come back either way. And when the time she was done with her 1 point, she felt amazing. And 2 days later, all of the candida drained out of her face. So it's just one of the amazing testimonies. Coming back to the sugar, I had a friend of mine in Oregon, where I live, who was in the cannabis industry for many decades, and stopped using cannabis about 5 years ago, started having a family, and not that he got to stop using cannabis, but he did. And he began to have a craving for sugar all the time. And if he had a choice between a steak and potato on the right, or a fresh tray of baked cookies, he'd eat the whole tray of cookies. And so he literally came to Kambo to shift his sugar addiction, and thus craving for sugar in his body. He put on a lot of weight from this, and being a businessman and just being a busy lifestyle, and he would just eat sugar. And so he came in, did Kambo. He's done it 3 times now, but his first time after Kambo, he had no more cravings for sugar. In fact, he went home and his wife had some fresh baked goods out, and he just didn't want anything to do with it. Not that he was anti-sugar, but like that call within his body, like that craving, what you might call from the internal, like candida or whatever it is, was not happening for him anymore. And instead of him having to activate discipline and work with that discipline of like, I'm going to be resistant and activate his own self-empowerment, he just didn't have the craving for it anymore. And the first week after Kambo, for the first time, he lost 8 pounds just from not eating sugar every day, and he's done Kambo now 3 times, which is what we recommend. And it's not even in his field of influence anymore, and back on the addiction fact, I have a daughter, and she brought her boyfriend one time to come do Kambo, who had an addiction to fentanyl or opiates, and he did 1 session of Kambo and went back to his environment and didn't have a craving for it at all. Was really incredible. So, and it's not just like you do Kambo once, you don't have addiction anymore. You got to still do the underlining mental and emotional work around it. But as far as a physical impulse to that he had for many years around opiates, wasn't there anymore. So it's just incredible what we've seen. So come back to your question.
The tribes.
The tribes, thank you. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, every tribe that we know of in the Amazon serves Kambo. Not all of them, but the ones that we've been able to have connection with. Not all of them have ever seen a Westerner, and so having that influence. The tribe we work with is the Mai Tribe, and it's the one that Kambo International has had a beautiful relationship with. They're probably the largest tribe that collects Kambo. The beautiful thing about that is with the exchange or with the relationship they've created with Kambo International and there's other organizations as well. With that exchange, they've been able to buy back their land from the government. I don't understand why you have to buy back your own land, but they've been able to buy back thousands of acres, if not multiple thousands of acres, to create a sacred environment for their tribe, as well as to create a sanctuary for the frog, and where they can really keep the frog sacred in its own environment and support its process and everything that it needs. It's so sacred. First of all, the frogs are arboreal, right? So they live up in the trees, and they're nocturnal animals. And so, with the sundown, the tribes do a mating call, and it calls the frogs down from the tree. And they even say now that the frogs know what they're doing. They know they're having an impact on humanity, and they're volunteering themselves to offer their secretion. And when they transfer the frog from the tree limb to the area where they take the secretion off, they don't even try to even touch it. If they can just cut the branch off of the tree and transfer it over, because it's so sacred to them. And they go through a process of where the females in the tribe, they tickle its nose. And when they tickle its nose, it secretes the secretion off the back. And they take these almost like bamboo popsicle sticks in a way, and they secrete this, or they take the secretion off the back of the frog, and they only take the first layer. The frog has two. And so they want to honor the frog for honoring what the secretion that the frog uses it for, to have it for what it needs. And, they do use it for defense mechanisms. The frog doesn't have any predators. So they're very friendly. If you want to go pick one up, they're not going to run from you. But now if a snake chooses to go up in the top of the tree and try to eat a frog, it will secrete the secretion in the frog. The snake will get sick very quickly and spit the frog back out. But either way, they'll keep it for what we know most of all what it uses for is they actually use it for mating. The frogs that mate, they mate in a hugging formation. And when that's done, the female frog lays the eggs on a leaf. And the male frog will take the secretion, almost like give itself a hug, and wipe the secretion off its back, and then begin to put the secretion on a leaf and form a slide. And so when the eggs begin to hatch, they slide off into the slide of the leaf into the river. So they can have their process of becoming beautiful frogs of what they're going to be. And so it's just really beautiful, and you understand like the history and the legends and how these tribes work with it. I'm kind of going around about your question, but just to give you the history of the legend of Kambo, this is thousands of years ago, there was a page named Kampu, and page means medicine man or in Portuguese, and his tribe had gotten deathly sick to the point of extinction. And he tried all his medicine, he tried all his modalities, everything he could do to save the tribe, and nothing was working. And so in the day of their belief system, they work with the medicine of ayahuasca. And in the medicine of ayahuasca, they believe they have a connection to source, to great creator, to Mother Earth. And in that medicine, they can get clarity and answers. And so he worked with the medicine of ayahuasca on his own and asked the grandmother of ayahuasca, how do I save my tribe? And while in the medicine, he was walked out into the rainforest to this green monkey tree frog, was shown how to secrete the secretion off the back of the frog without harming it, and was given a vision of how to burn the skin of his tribe members and put medicine on the burn. So he ended up doing that, and he ended up saving the entire tribe. And what's even beautiful about that is actually when he took his last breath as a human, his spirit went into the frog. This is the legend of Kambo, and that's why the medicine is called Kambo, because his name was Kampu. And so, the medicine came through the medicine of ayahuasca. That's a whole other topic. But second of all, what's really more beautiful about that story is the fact that every tribe that we know of that carries Kambo has the exact same legend, even though some tribes never spoken. And so that's the consciousness of the frog providing the information around how this medicine works. And Kambo is out of the jungle, not because some man or woman brought it out. That might have been the vehicle. But this medicine's been there for thousands of years, and it's out of the jungle in this moment because it's wanted to make an impact on humanity. And it's out because the consciousness of that medicine wanted to be out of the jungle. And that's why it's here. And what's amazing is that the peptides that are in Kambo have a direct relationship with actually what's happening on the planet right now within our human bodies. And we just find it amazing. And when you really go down the rabbit hole of Kambo, it's just a continuous wow moments of understanding around this medicine. And so Kambo International has a beautiful relationship with the Mai Tribe. They deal with them directly. And it's beautiful in how we get the medicine. We also get multiple medicines from them that all support the Kambo process. One of them being arape or hape, the other one being sananga, which is the eye drops. And these all support in the Kambo process when working with that medicine. And so just having that relationship and getting the wisdom from the tribes and getting updates around how the frogs are doing, and not just like how their daily life is, but how they're evolving and how their environment is and what the process is. As you talked about Big Pharma, the one gift around Big Pharma's investigation into Kambo was that we were able to have a scientific understanding around what the peptides actually do in Kambo. So that was a really big blessing about that. But as you mentioned, Big Pharma tried to synthesize each peptide and then recreate Kambo synthetically, and nothing would happen. And, it needs the consciousness of the frog to do what it's going to do. Even if somebody goes down to the Amazon and chooses to, capture a frog and take it home to secrete the secretion, the frog won't secrete. It has to stay in its environment. So it's a really beautiful message for mankind. If you just leave things the way they are, you get everything you need. It's already beautifully, perfectly designed to support our human consciousness and our bodies and all that we are, from every plant, every herb that is here for us to, every medicine that is here for us to receive. There in the Kambo International or just other practitioners that are certified licensed, there's probably about 2,000 people on the planet, 3,000 that are probably certified licensed to serve Kambo. There are many other people who are serving Kambo. Now, there's many people who've gone down and lived in a tribe and they've learned that tribal way. Being a master practitioner, you actually get to learn all the different ways the tribes serve it. Every tribe serves Kambo differently. And, some tribes, if they won't let you sit down, they make you stand up. Some tribes, if you pass out, they just throw you in the river. Some tribes don't drink water because they have a 3-day walk to water. So to do a 3-day hike to water to come back to purge that water out doesn't make any sense to them. Some tribes drink a kasuma soup, which is almost like a yucca root. It's almost reminds me of like boxed mashed potatoes. And you drink this liter of soup and it goes down and it absorbs all the toxins. And then when you purge, that one big glob of just gelatinous goo comes out with all the toxins in it. And so I've run across many practitioners who've been trained by different tribes, and it's really beautiful. It's just the fact that it's good to have the information of how all the tribes serve it. Because I've met with some practitioners who would like to voice opinions around different ways that I serve because they've only been trained in one lineage or one way, and which is beautiful for their way, and it works. It always works. But there are also multiple ways of serving. If I serve a 92-year-old woman with dementia, I would serve her differently than I would serve, say, a 30-year-old that's coming in for just a biological cleanse. It's different ways of serving the medicine. And so thankful for the relationship that Kambo International has with these tribes, that we get to get that information. And the tribes have also elevated the way they serve it. Now they're changing it up a little bit and offering that knowledge to us in the different ways. And so it's really interesting, and we're getting the forefront. But as well as the concept of the Kambo helps us learn. It's not always about book study; it's about the experience. And I know you sit with the medicine yourself. I still sit with the medicine. In fact, I'm sitting with it next week again. In fact, the man who took me my first Kambo ceremony, we got trained together, and he's going to be serving me. I haven't seen him in years, and so it's going to be a really beautiful reunion. But we continue to work with this medicine to stay connected to the medicine, to stay connected to the consciousness of the medicine, and be supported with the medicine when we serve it. So it's an ongoing process. And I really advise anyone who works with it as well to continue your process with Kambo. If you've sat with it 3 times, the medicine will call you. Might call you a month later, a week later, 6 months later, a year later when you want to come back. But it's really tuning into how this medicine can be of service for you and help you in every way. That's what it's here to do, and it wants to be of service to humanity. So.
Yeah, there's so many aspects to how Kambo is providing its own methods of healing. And I know I have a heart for first responders and the people who are in public safety to serve humanity. We're serving our communities. And we need to be in this state of being the most centered, the most vital person that's showing up in your home, putting your fires out and serving your family. And I truly believe that this epidemic with mental health, Kambo is one of the answers. Truly believe it. I put all my money down on it because it goes into the system and has this way of knowing what to do. And if you're struggling with PTSD or what label you want to put on it, anxiety, depression, these emotional aspects of Kambo is really the next part I really want to talk about. And because that's one of the most gratifying pieces I've came to discover. And after I had gone through my own workings with Kambo for the biological, neurological issues I was dealing with, the emotional aspect was the next chapter. And as I was working with that chapter, man, that was where I was just like honoring Kambo and really giving it its respect. Because I always reference Kambo it really takes a sledgehammer to the concrete blocks we put up to protect ourselves. And we do this as a means of protection because throughout the life of hurt and suffering, we do that to ourselves. And Kambo knows that these walls we build, they don't serve us. It's not going to allow us to enter into intuition, into the highly intelligent parts of who we are as human beings. So what Kambo does is it tears away those concrete blocks, shows you what's underneath, and then you can process it and really bring it to the forefront and release it. And so if you're going to be able to close a chapter on something, and what we work with here is behavioral patterns. And these behavioral patterns are these mechanisms that we create for ourselves and which we offer through our personality or this construct of who we believe we are. And it's a limitation. And with these things, it shows us underneath that there's this place of our identity, our truth that's underneath that is showing us something. So a lot of times these emotional places where we are in, that we place ourselves in limitation, Kambo can take you to that place and give you more clarity and more understanding of why or how, and you have to process it. So a lot of times in Kambo, these things come up into your consciousness. And some people have referred to me like they see like a slideshow of memories sometimes that come up, or just a serious emotion that you're carrying dormant inside you comes to the surface. And so we talk about the 4 methods of purging. One of those is emotion. And so you'll come to this if you get a chance to give yourself permission to process an emotion, you'll really have a serious deep cry or a wailing cry. And sometimes anger, that'll come up to the surface. I know a guy who was served Kambo, his process was tearing a bucket into pieces because he was so angry, but that was his process. He really needed to get that out. So with that, this emotional piece is this part of Kambo that allows us to release things that are dormant, and it shows us the true essence of who we are. And the cool part is that, Kambo has been referred to as an entheogen. It is non-psychoactive, but it takes you to this higher realm of consciousness within yourself to process what is the truth and what's lying underneath. And you can really go into it, which is really fascinating the way it's working. And it's correlating on so many different levels with different medicines, how it supports them. I know you introduced me to that book, Kambo Iboga Ayahuasca, and how this guy, it's a synergy of entheogens, how Kambo supports these powerful plant medicines that bring healing. So this intelligence that we're working with here is, like I said before, it is beyond our understanding. And it's continuing to show us in the circles in which we serve this medicine how profound it is. It's just various amounts of symptoms. I mean, I had, for my own personal workings with Kambo, I had released streptococcus virus. It's a virus that stays dormant in your system. And I had it 10 years ago. And any virus that's dormant in your system will be released to the surface. And so the cool part too is like, it works off natural order. And so the way things work is like, if you have a symptom of something, or if something that is dormant as like viral, what Kambo does is it pushes it to the surface for it to be released, for something to show itself one last time before it leaves. And it's a common trait, and it even works with emotions as well. Sometimes people will do Kambo and have a array of emotions that come up for them, because they've stuffed them down in their subconscious, and then now you get a chance to process them. And that can be really uncomfortable for people. That's why integration with Kambo is really important, to understand like what Kambo is doing. And that's why it's also been referred to as the great revealer, because it's revealing something to you after that process. I know for myself, I've done Kambo and I felt I had a week of paranoia that was dormant in my system. I had to sit with it. And it was so uncomfortable. Just the feeling of paranoia is, oh man, I don't wish that upon anyone, because it's just a very, very uncomfortable, rattling emotion. And, it's just going into the process with that, it just carries some dormant fear that I had to look at. And it really brought this communication about feeling whole, complete with myself by processing certain emotions. And as I learned to understand the completeness of everything, Kambo really came into the fruition of how to show me the completeness of oneself at an emotional level and a mental level. These parts of us, they correlate to one another and they communicate. And to find balance, Kambo really moves things around in such a way that allows us to find healing. Mm-hmm. And healing is such a grand term, right? We put this word heal or heal yourself, right? But it's all about balance. That's the key word here is balance and harmony. Mm-hmm. And in conjunction to that is when you are in those states, you feel centered and you're able to show up for yourself in such a way that now your life changes after you start to do this really deep work and a rapid process of change. So that being said, like some of the clients I've had who have come to me, they are mostly desperate. And that's the common trait I've seen recently, because people have tried everything else. They don't know what to do. They hit me up like, "Hey John, what's this frog shit you got? Just give it to me, dude." So they come to me and, they look just really sick, pale, dark circles under their eyes. And after working with Kambo, some of these people, they leave my house looking like a different person. And on top of that, their color comes back in their face. Their eyes are gleaming with joy. And there's this essence that I can see and watch people. And it's one of the most profound gifts I've ever had to experience. And this is a service I find within myself after I've gone through my own workings with Kambo that I'm able to provide for people. And it's just so beautiful to watch people transform. And the thing about Kambo is it does it at a rapid rate, to where if you sat with Kambo consecutively 3 days back to back, it really will change the way you look, the way you feel, the way you operate your life. It's I wish people can witness it. And I really want people just to be open and honest with themselves about listening to this and seeing, because I know first responders are stubborn. I was stubborn before I did this. And I was so desperate, I didn't care anymore. That's why I was willing to lay on my own filth and throw up in a bucket, because I was tired of being sick. So it rescued me, and it rescued my girlfriend from her own issues, physically, mentally, emotionally. And I cannot stress enough that, if for the first responder industry, we are surrounded by so much, and to show up for Kambo is a lot of work. It really is. On your off day, you have to take the time to show up for yourself and process Kambo. It's like, it's not the one thing you want to do when you're off shift. The limited days we do have to rest and recover. And that's why a lot of people don't want to do Kambo. So I just want to offer this offering to you of Kambo, that knowing that down the road, you're going to thank yourself later, because it's going to provide this way of transformation for yourself. And I know it's, I taken it upon myself to sponsor a firefighter or a veteran. And usually it's about every 3 months I sponsor someone. And I just, if someone's really, really sick and I'm like, "Hey man, let's try some Kambo." And they don't have to pay me anything. It's just my offering because I know it's going to help. And I really felt that calling last year, when I just know that this medicine heals people, and brings that balance in someone's life. So that goes into a lot of what I started working with in the beginning of my practitioner training, and also after my training, is serving people who with issues with the vaccine, or the V word, as I say. And a lot of people in our job, they had issues with imbalances with, whatever it was, like heavy metals inside of it they started having cardiac myopathy, palpitations, and headaches, these bizarre symptoms that were coming up in the body. And I was giving Kambo, and it was healing them. And it was releasing all these heavy metals that weren't really resonating within the system. And I was just kind of like really bewildered by it, because some people came to me really desperate, like, hey man, like, I'm having cardiac palpitations. Never dealt with this in my life. I got 3 kids at home. I don't know what to do. And so it's been really cool, where I gave one person who had that issue, this gentleman who's a fireman, and he got up after one Kambo session and was like, dude, I don't know what you did to me, but I don't have any symptoms anymore. Wow. And so it's becoming this thing where, like, it just knows what to do. And when you're in the rut of feeling like hopeless, there's hope with Kambo. And the thing with that too is, like, I know one thing we talk about is it is treatment based. Mm-hmm. So in the treatment based program, it's like Kambo, like we refer to as, like, it's not the magic bullet, but as a treatment based, you stack the treatments. And so the more you work with Kambo, the more you're going to see the benefits, and the closer you put those treatments together, you'll have a more gratifying effect. So that being said, like, in reference to, like, the stacking the treatments, you really have to trust the practitioner who's serving you, and know that they're supporting you in every way with receiving Kambo, integrating the experience, and walking you through the consciousness of how to navigate the medicine as well. So when you're working with Kambo, and a lot of people do Kambo and they say, I'm never doing that ever again. They leave the next day, they feel so vital and so renewed that they'll call me up and they'll be like, hey, when's the next time you're serving Kambo? Because it's not an easy process by all means. And when I said earlier about how it takes that sledgehammer, it feels like that, because it is one of the most challenging things you will ever experience. And that's the cool thing too, is about first responders like challenges, right? Physically, mentally, emotionally. Like, if you want a challenge, Kambo is the thing for you. Mm-hmm. And it's going to take you to a serious challenging moment with yourself. It's one of the hardest things, but that portion of Kambo is, it provides this navigation point to find the warrior spirit within. Mm-hmm. And that's why we call people who do Kambo warriors. And that empowerment of that warrior spirit is something that is dormant. Sometimes we forget that it's there, and Kambo allows you to have access to that. And so if you're now knowing this empowerment, that you're working through Kambo and you're having to be able to grasp that spirit again, it provides this this paradigm shift within oneself to just be able to, be productive in your life. You can find your purpose again. It changes things with that just one factor mm-hmm. of the warrior self, which is really wonderful. So by all means, there is another portion I wanted to talk to you about, and I wanted you to kind of give it more reference to the process of surrender. So, because surrender is a major component of Kambo, and in the process of that, and I know for me, that showed me so much in the way I was able to navigate my life of learning about surrendering, letting go, and how it's given me access to my own personal evolution. So, yeah, brother, if you can just kind of give it up. First of all, the word surrender is something that is a misnomer,
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, in the reference of surrender doesn't mean the white flag, right? And I feel that maybe a lot of first responders coming from, authoritative background with any kind of, military involvement or anything where, usually first responders are the ones that have always been the protectors, probably from growing up from day one, right? They just had a calling to help other people. And so sometimes that word surrender is posted in a give up position, like a less than, defeated kind of setting. And surrender doesn't mean that. I mean, that's one definition of it. It depends on the context you work with it. But I want to come back. I'm going to tie surrender into it, but coming back to the emotional process and I tie surrender into the conscious work with Kambo. And I'll tell you my experience, In the training of Kambo, when you become a practitioner, the first thing you do is when you go to the organization to get trained, you have to do your initiation. And your initiation is 3 rounds of Kambo in 3 hours. And talk about a warrior experience. You're doing 3 rounds of Kambo in 3 hours. And in the second round, in my experience with Kambo, it brought forth a pattern. Talk about those patterns. And I got very uncomfortable in my stomach, and I couldn't do anything to purge it out. I couldn't do anything to support it. I could try, but nothing was helping. And I had to go into it. I had to surrender into it. I had to go consciously into that process and ask myself, like, what is this thing in my stomach? And the medicine was very clear. It said, this is a behavioral pattern you created called fear of abandonment with your mom's depression in 6th grade. And I had to sit with it, and had to sit with the uncomfortability of it. And the medicine showed me that this pattern you developed of fear of abandonment helped you in the moment of 6th grade, but you've been running it for 30 years. And so it had me just feel the discomfort around that it actually was causing me. I thought it was helping me for the past 30 years, but actually feel the limitation that it caused. And I couldn't do anything to purge it out. And so in the 3rd round of Kambo, it was still there. And as I mentioned, I had to really go into it and find out what the gift of it was, or what was the reason for it, what was the purpose of it, or why it was there. And once it showed me, and I had to surrender to the feeling, I had to surrender to the uncomfortability of it, and had to really, what we call go into it, like go in and ask what it is, compared to trying to fight it or resist it or get it out. I had to sit with it and sit with the uncomfortability and surrender to that feeling, so then I get the clarity of it. And once I got the clarity of why it's there and why I had to have that process, it just popped out like spit, like no big deal. And so that's just an example of surrender and doing your emotional work, or going and doing your inner work with your patterns or thought processes. And this work, it doesn't mean you sit here and put yourself down for things you've done in the past. That's not what we're talking about. It's about being able to understand, like, why you behave certain ways. Why are you triggered when your partner asks you to take the trash out? Like, where does that come from? What is that about? Where do these things? So this is when we really conscious work with, and the ability of Kambo offers that. You don't have to do it, but the fact is, whether you come in the circle for a biological cleanse, neurological reset, beautiful, that's available for you. But if you want to go into conscious work, we can help guide you into that. And I'm so grateful to work with Kambo International, because they teach that. They teach the conscious work with this beautiful medicine. But it's really going into that space. It's really being able to look at yourself from a neutral place. So when we talk about surrender, like, can you look at yourself from a place of neutrality without any judgment? Can you look at yourself as an action that you did, or a thought maybe you had, without thinking that thought was good or bad, or that action was good or bad, and just be able to go into the underlying cause of, like, why maybe you reacted that way, or why you responded that way, or why you felt you needed to behave that way, and go into it just from a place of discovery. And, like, that's surrender. Surrender is being neutral with your own self. It's not giving up authority to something else, or giving up the power to something else. That's, like I said, one definition of it. But in working with Kambo, it's really surrendering to that communication, that intelligence, or that information that's already in your system, that's looking to offer something for you for more clarity around your being. And then when you can surrender to it, or go into it and receive the gift of that from a place of non-judgment around your own self, it will release, and you'll feel an opening, you'll feel a clearing, you'll feel an elevation, you'll feel more empowered with being able to go and surrender within yourself.
Yeah, I mean, surrender, it takes you, for some reason, we have this pattern as human beings it takes us to that point of having to be on our knees to witness within ourselves this path of healing. And Kambo takes you there. It puts you on your knees to where you're like, take it. I don't know what to do. I surrender to it. And that's the humbling part of it too, because you cannot defeat Kambo. That's the thing too. Some first responders, they'll come in with this alpha aggressive mentality, like, I'm going to heal my body, and I'm going to do this by fighting it. Doesn't work that way. I'm sorry. Doesn't. And when you learn that, if you try using that, Kambo will really give it to you, and you will have a rough time. And that's why when you work with a practitioner, they can guide you around the parts of the intelligence of Kambo, because that's not the way it works. And this is why I also want to go into the aspect of that Kambo is a heart-based medicine. So when you're using your logical mind in Kambo, it doesn't work very well. You're going to find a lot of dead ends. You're going to actually find yourself in a labyrinth of just not being able to navigate it. But in the heart center, the heart of our being, the center of our chest, this place of accessing the highest intelligence of who we are as human beings, that's where Kambo goes. And if you can go there in Kambo and you can see what that's showing you, you learn how to actually move into that space of yourself to really become a superhuman being. Because we're designed to be access points from the heart center. And we learn with Kambo, as it teaches us that, we're discovering that it is the access point. And the funny part with that is, like, I had to learn how to do that. And your body in your mind knows that that's what it's supposed to do. But we don't teach that. We're not programmed to go there. And if you tell a firefighter or a police officer or a veteran that that's what you have to do, they're going to be like, well, that's so weird. That's weak. You got to work with your emotions. Not true. Actually, the emotional body of what we access is actually way more valuable as a way of showing where you are in your life. Are you reacting too much in your relationships or in your job or your career? Are you quick to anger? So these are the things that we're working around, to where when you're working with Kambo, you actually become more calm and centered because of that reason. And like I said before, you're not going to defeat Kambo. It's not going to happen. And don't fight it. There's this, there's so many different people who have come to me, and, they second guess what I'm teaching them, because they don't understand from a programming, of how this works. And we're moving away in the field of first responders away from this stigma that emotions are weak, because emotions are not weak. They're actually this way of seeing oneself truly. And, I had come into this realization of emotions. I've seen it like a basketball. If you can see then hold your emotions, you can shoot the basketball, you can dribble, and you can use it to your advantage. And I always see someone who's emotionally blocked by having, if you go to a park and it's a really old basketball and it's got lumps all over it, and you start dribbling that thing, it's going to bounce all over the place. So that is like how I've seen and envisioned emotions in a way. But if you learn and start to tap into it, you can use it as a point of reference for being a master of your life. And that's just one portion of how you can do that. So we want to get away from the stigma that emotions are weak. We want to get away from the idea that you're weak for even feeling emotions. And one of the things I know I can be a testament to that, is when I go to work, I feel blocked emotionally because I'm protecting myself. And this is a common trait, and it's a natural means of unconscious protection. When I'm going to work and I'm trying to treat someone, I have to be in a place of kind of like this centeredness when I'm doing my job, and I can't allow my emotions to come through. So I have to protect myself in a way, but when I come home, I can't do that because now I'm blocked. I'm not transparent. I'm not communicating with my partner or children. You know what I mean? I can't access my life like that. So this becomes this way of Kambo showing you how to relive what those emotions are and release the emotional debris that doesn't serve you anymore, and really feel into what needs to be felt. And I just really know from personal experience, like if you continue living your life with this callousness, that is one of the key points that leads to burnout. And burnout is becoming one of the main issues of what we're dealing with as far as like PTSI or PTSD. Like you're dealing with burnout first. And once you hit burnout, you're completely numb all over. You don't feel anymore. And it's not a good feeling. And if you're working with that numb feeling, people will fall into other ways of trying to feel again, whether it's a addiction issues, alcoholism, and dealing with just sex addictions, porn addictions. These things are mechanisms to, we want to feel something because we feel nothing. So this is one of the things we're seeing, is that this is what's leading into the demise, and later down the road, suicide ideation, and then later on suicides. But one of the highest ways firefighters are dying right now is through suicide. So what we're discovering with this is like, this medicine is a pathway of healing to get past this way of burnout. And you really have to trust it. You got to trust it. I just really want to have people be just to listen and to understand, like, Kambo is bizarre. I know it is. And it's bizarre because it's, you're just sitting in a room, and like, these 40 minutes, you got to go through this process, and no one wants to throw up, in a bucket, but there's something about it, I mean, and in the end, you're going to thank yourself. So I don't know, dude, did you have any other like, recent things you've seen in Kambo that has kind of caught your eye as far as like, bizarre healing or anything like that?
I mean, there's always stuff. Yeah. I want to come back to that great point you talked about, the heart, and reminding everybody that we have three brains. We have the gut brain, we have the heart brain, and we have the brain and the mind. And, our society's been really taught to be completely mental dominant to navigate life. And, when we say live in the heart, yes, you could think of it in the reference of like, go out and love everybody and give everybody a hug. That's great. But what we're really talking about is that there's an intelligence that comes from the heart brain. And when I say heart, yes, there's the emotions. We say, feel into things, and we don't really mean emotions. We mean like feel into like what feels right for you in that moment. And, the heart was the first organ that's created in the womb, and through the heart creates your brain, your eyes, your nerves, your skin. Every part of your being was created through the heart in the womb as you get created into a human being, creating a shell for your soul to come into. And so there's some intelligence you can tap into that, and call it intuition, call it guidance, call it highest self, call it internal information, whatever reference you want to have for it. But I know that if there's first responders listening to this podcast, you've had your intuition. I'm sure you've been given many protocols and many standard operating procedures and protocols of how to handle certain situations. But I also know that if you really gotten pushed into a moment of instinct, you followed your intuition, and you followed what you need to do. And sometimes that aligned with the education you have, and sometimes it didn't. And you just did what you knew in that moment would need to happen, whether it be to save a life or support somebody or get somebody's safety or rescue somebody or help your brother or help your sister or whatever it may be for you. You've tapped into that space, and that space of intuition doesn't come from the mind. It comes from the heart, and that is where you can access that information. And so I've had many people come out of Kambo and they've gotten more in tune. They said that they feel more intuitive after Kambo. Whether they want to connect that to a chakra or they want to connect it to just the fact he's having that relationship of communication has been resurfaced or rebuilt or advanced in some beautiful way. But that's the heart intelligence. So when we say live in your heart, we mean there's a higher intelligence that lives within you that you connect through your heart. Call it the godlike realm, call it the higher self, call it the infinite intelligence, call it your internal wisdom, whatever name you want to give it. But that access door to that information is through the heart. And so we work on bringing yourself into that, whether it be meditation, bring yourself into that heart chakra, or bring yourself just in the chest and feel yourself being in there. And it allows you to navigate those moments with your child. I just had a moment with my son, and he's 8 years old and he's in second grade, and he loves getting to school early. He loves going and being with his friends early to play. And it's very, very important to him at this age of life. Like they're starting to develop that they realize that they are their own being outside of the relationship they have with their parents, and their friendships become a very priority to them. And so, bless his heart, he was walking around the house in the morning the other day, and he was asking me what more can he help me with so we can get in the car and leave. Does he even take the trash out? Does he want me to can I grab your water bottle? Can I grab your wallet, Dad? Can I grab your phone? Like, what can I help you with? And I turned to him and I said, I know you want to get to school early, but we have some things to do around the house. And then I felt my heart. And I paused and I got down on one knee and got to his level and I said, are you really trying to help? Are you helping me around the house because it's really important to you that we get to school, right? And that's really important so you can see your friends. And he's like, yeah. I said, great, let's get in the car and let's go. And, you know, it being in your heart allows you to have those moments, because my head was like, no, I have 3 more things around the house to do before I leave for the day. But my heart was like, your son's trying to say something to you. And luckily my heart took over in that moment and allowed me to come into my heart and have a connection with him. Because in that moment of him doing 3 more responsibilities around the house isn't important to him. It's important. He's being nice and helping me, trying to help me whatever I need to do around the house so we can get in the car now and get out. And if I'm just focused on my duties in the house, I'm not actually focusing on what his needs are. And his needs are, he's being so helpful because he wants to get to school early, and that's the big thing of his day. And so my heart, that intelligence of the heart, called me out on it in that moment. It happens in a 10th of a second. It called me out and said, hey, your son's telling you something different here. You need to listen to him. And it allowed me to stop, compared to just rant and rage, not rage, but rant in my parent mindset as far as like, no, we're doing these responsibilities around the house before we're going to get you to school, because that's what I need to do. And so that heart space can help you with the relationships you have with yourself, with your children, with your partner, with coworkers. You know, I'm sure people on this podcast has had somebody, maybe they're having a tough day, and the clerk at the store or their partner's just giving them a hug out of nowhere, and that just softened them up. And they've been influenced by having somebody come to them when they're just in their heart. And so we can be the same for other people. And so it's beautiful for Kambo because it helps you kind of come into that space and activate that intelligence that can call you out in the moments where you're being dominated by your stomach brain or your mind brain, and that comes into the intelligence of the heart brain. The heart brain has more neurons in it than the brain. And so that's the source of information and intelligence that we should be actually tuning into. The mind is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. It's the most complex structure in the entire universe is the brain, the mind brain. And, you know, but if we can put the brain into the co-pilot seat and allow the heart brain to guide us in our moments and activate the co-pilot when we need it, when we need the logical understanding, we need to make an analytical decision. When we're at work, we need to follow a protocol. Like, those are beautiful places. We're not saying anti-minded on anything. We're just saying that there is actually a deeper level of intelligence around how to walk through your life that comes through the connection that you can activate through your heart. And almost every single spiritual practices or limited belief systems around spirituality like teaches this, because this is the source of how we actually connect to our own inner knowledge and inner wisdom around anything in life.
So well put, man. And you know, it takes time to tap into that. You know, you really have to steer yourself and put a bit more focus if you're not living in that space. You know, and it does take a bit of intuition and discipline and focus to get there. And a lot of times it's that listening of yourself too, and like that quiet space within yourself. And you know, it's taken me a really long time to get there. And I know I had a marker to choose, you know, a pathway. You know, do I want to live more in my heart or in my head? And a lot of times when I live in my head, you know, Kambo's taught me a lot to realize that, when I talked about before, like, you're creating a labyrinth for yourself by living in your head. Because when you tap into all the aspects of yourself, you can really have this synergistic effect to align within all the intelligence of your being. And that's why Kambo works within clearing the gut. So you can operate within the intuition of your gut, and then operating by learning how to navigate the pivot point of the heart space. And then the mind can be, all it has to do, the mind now has to just make decisions to act. So kind of going into the heart space and Kambo, like it's correlating to this transformational change of what we truly are as human beings. Mm-hmm. And I'm always going to relate it to, you know, the fire service, because the fire service is it's a logical career. You know, we think with our minds a lot, and it can be really exhausting. So when you kind of extract from being in the mind or in your head so much, and you can use other parts of yourself, you know, you can give yourself a bit of of more of a break, from not having to do that and exhausting yourself. Like you can be at home doing nothing all day, and by the end of the day be so exhausted because you're stuck in your head. It's just a thing, man. And like that clarity you have when you're walking in the peace within yourself, it's usually within the heart. And it's just a co-relating system that, it's not taught. And we're re-educating, how to feel better and get around, this being exhausted and hypervigilance and all these things that are coming up for us. And this takes really a lot of personal practice with yourself too. And the more you practice with yourself and learning the navigations of your body, your intelligence systems, you're going to really find this superhuman nature. And I truly believe and harp on teaching about we can be superhumans. Mm-hmm. And that is a quality we can have. And before you get to that point, you got to get through the junk first, and you got to clear out the junk, and you got to do some really deep work on yourself. And Kambo offers a point of transformation for you to do that and show up for yourself. And what I mean by showing up for yourself, this is an opportunity to honor you and just being with you. I always say Kambo is you versus you. The practitioner that's in the room, they don't do much. All they're doing is putting the medicine on you, making sure you're safe. And safety meaning like you're not, because you do pass out sometimes, and making sure you don't hit your head or anything like that. But for the most part, it's you. And you're in this place of almost solitude within yourself, and you get to see what that is for you and what comes up. And if you continue this work, it's not a lifetime of healing. You can finish your healing now, so you can now show up for your family, your friends, your career in the most superhuman form you can. Mm-hmm. So with that, as we transition like our lives and do this deep work, we call this the great work. This is the aspect of the greatest existence at a soul level. And we have to get to that point within humanity to see that every person has to get to that point of consciousness, to honor themselves at a soul level. Mm-hmm. And to realize like, I'm in control of my reality. I'm a creator being, and I'm tired of being sick. I'm tired of being depressed and anxious all the time. And so Kambo comes to the surface for it to assist humanity to really give you that point of direction and transition your life in such a way. So I don't know. I think one of the only things here is like, what is Kambo not for? Who can't do Kambo? There's a list of people who Kambo's not good for, and I'd like for you to kind of go over that. Kambo, for the most part, is good for everybody, but there are some things like some people with cardiac issues, things like that, Kambo cannot be safe for. But I'd like for you to talk about that.
Yeah, there's not a lot of contraindications to Kambo. But there are some kind of unique things out there, One of them would be, of course, if anyone's pregnant, they can't work with Kambo. Second of all is if somebody has given birth and they have to wait at least 6 months before they can work with Kambo, because there's a potentiality with Kambo that can actually dry up the ducts in the breast for creating milk. And so also if you've been breastfeeding for a couple of years and you just kind of want to have that come to an end, you can also come do Kambo because it can stop that process. There's some unique things. One of them is the fact that if you've had any, especially with first responders, if you have any organ implants where you have a artificial or another being's organ in you, you cannot work with Kambo. If you're on any immune suppressants, you cannot work with Kambo. Yes, there are some heart limitations or cardiac things working with Kambo, but if you've been cleared by your doctor to do, say, cardio on the treadmill, then it's okay. So it depends on what the ailment is or what the diagnosis is with that process. Interesting enough, people who are, say, with bipolar or schizophrenia, they can work with Kambo, but the funny thing is if they're medicated, they cannot work with Kambo, or not recommended, because the Kambo can sometimes clear out the medication, and then therefore might put them into a process with that bipolarism or the schizophrenia. But actually not being medicated, and they're somewhat viable with that process. Kambo can really help them if they choose and they want to come with it. So there's a whole list. I know you have it. I have it. That what you can do. They're pretty unique in the limitations around who can't work with Kambo. If you're somebody who takes low blood pressure medication, then would definitely recommend that. But if you take high blood pressure medication, you're okay. So there's much different details around work with that. So I'm sure you do the same. When I have somebody who's interested in Kambo, I send them out an email with the paperwork that all says the contraindications and what to expect, and we do a complimentary connect call online or on the phone to talk before they even commit, so they can get more understanding, more information around the process, and we go over all that information and they read through it.
So one of the things I've come to you and people have come to me for is they want to get off their SSRIs. Mm-hmm. And I know I've come to you for a lot of, education information about SSRIs, and not a lot of firemen or firefighters take SSRIs. But I know people who do, and they want to get off of them safely. And Kambo really provides a pathway to get off SSRIs safely. Especially for someone who's been taking SSRIs for, let's say, 20 years, they can't just get off their medication or to put them in the hospital. Right. They'll go in a state of panic, and there's been years of serotonin depletion inside the brain, to where that serotonin dump and the sickness you get from that is really severe. Mm-hmm. But the thing that Kambo does is it really helps to rewire the brain and access different parts of the brain, that now it's able to help and assist that coping mechanism to get off SSRIs safely, which has been really fascinating. I've witnessed it in so many different ways, to where people are afraid because they've done it before, and they're like, dude, I can't get off my medication. Like, help me, Yeah. So I'd love for you to kind of go into like the details of like the way SSRIs work, number one. And then number two, like, what the process is for Kambo when you are getting off SSRIs.
Yeah. Well, not just SSRIs, when we can talk about that specifically, but really getting off a lot of medications, Kambo can help, and there's a process to that. It's not just come do Kambo and all of a sudden you stop taking your medication. I'll come back to that, but SSRIs, of course, is a way for your brain to balance out the chemical production of serotonin and the way that your brain's tonic chemicals are being created for balancing out your system. And the thing is with the SSRIs that people get from the prescription world, it makes their mind become dominant and dependent upon those things. And with the neuropeptides, with the neuropeptides in Kambo, it begins to really calibrate like the production of the mind and how it's calibrated. They also say that the mind, the neural construct of the mind looks very much like the mycelium network of mushrooms underground. So there's all these wires that are happening and firing and the process. And again, Kambo's looking for the imbalance. And so one of the things that Kambo does is it helps the system rebalance itself, not just SSRIs, but the way that the organs or the system is being dependent or around those medications. And so in the process of taking Kambo, what we do with SSRIs is that somebody would take their SSRI. We want to find out the half-life of what that medicine is, and we honor that half-life. So if it's 12 hours or 36 hours or whatever it is, they receive Kambo at that half-life moment of that medication. And then when they feel ready, maybe the next day, 2 days, 3 days later, however long they can go without it. But then when they need to take the medication again, they lower their dosage. And it could be lowered 5%, 25%, 50%, like whatever they want to do, whatever they feel comfortable doing. They lower their dosage. And then again, when they're ready, maybe a week later, a day later, a month later, they do Kambo again, when they're ready. And then we lower the dosage again. So we slowly step them down. And it begins to allow their mind to become more self-regulated and it allows the other parts of the mind that aren't maybe relating in producing the chemicals or the tonic chemicals that are keeping balance, and it slowly allows the brain to come back into its function. This human body that our soul lives in is so intelligent, and it's so complex in the way that it operates. If somebody is also, a little fearful around going through that process, there's a second additive I would add to that. And I would say that if you really want to come off your SSRIs and it's been a struggle for you in the past, or you have a lot of fear around it, then I would say bring in the second additive of, say, microdosing mushrooms. And as you lower your SSRI with the Kambo, you then begin to add in a tiny bit of microdosing mushrooms, because the mycelium network, again, like I said, of mushrooms look very much like the neurons in the brain, and they'll begin to help restructure the neurons in the brain. And they're kind of like mushrooms to Kambo is kind of like caffeine to the human. Yeah, the mushrooms really add the impact of Kambo, not directly, but they help that neurons in the brain like speed up its connection, so your body becomes less dependent upon the SSRI faster. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we still use the Kambo to get the SSRI out of the body, because it's not just in your mind, like it's in your kidneys, it's in your liver, it's in your tissue, and so the Kambo helps flush the SSRI out of the cells of your entire system, so your body's not dependent upon that anymore, because any SSRI is pretty complex constructed, where it's designed for your body to become dependent upon it. There's a reason for that, but that's a whole other conversation. But in that way, and so the mushrooms actually help build the neurons in the brain, speed up the Kambo process in helping your body become less addictive or less dependent upon them, and so you can come off them faster. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. You don't have to do the mushrooms. You would slowly take Kambo, maybe take it for 6 months, a year, every week or every month, whatever it is, and slowly just walk yourself down. If you want to drop your dose 5% every time and just walk yourself down from wherever you are, it's beautiful. But we've seen it with so many people have come off of their medications, most predominantly being SSRIs, but there's other medications we can walk people off as well. But it's a really beautiful process, and the freedom that these people feel when they realize that there's been something there that's either been making them look, tired or not depressed, but like weak or soft or lethargic, like whatever it may be for you, and then have that sense of freedom come back in their vitality and their vigor and their strength. It's really beautiful to witness that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And the fact you bring up psilocybin, as there's so many more studies now I'm falling into and seeing with this upbringing of psilocybin to treat people with anxiety and depression now, and rebuilding serotonin levels naturally is really amazing. And it blows me away. And I know when people are trying to get off medications in Kambo, they will actually taste the medication when it's coming out of their body. And this kind of goes into a lot of other things too, when you're purging things. Like I know a friend that I had helped, he stopped drinking 2 years ago, and he could taste beer when he was purging. Wow. And hadn't had a lick of alcohol for 2 years. So like whatever's stuck in the system, these people's experiences are it's only coming from personal experience. It's not something that's scientific. It's every individual case that's showing what Kambo's doing. And that's what's really valuable about what the work we're doing as practitioners, is that each case individually is showing something in a new light of what Kambo has to offer. And, one of the things people are so stricken and feel chained with are their medications, and being dependent on them. And you're right, that sense of not being free is really debilitating. And the thing with some of these medications, including SSRIs, is that, they have these, you always see these commercials, right? And after the commercial's done, you have a person whispering about every single side effect for that medication. And the thing about these medications, these side effects, they're not side effects. They are direct effects. you're feeling these things. You're gaining weight. You have restless leg syndrome. You have headaches. You have all these things that are coming up from these medications. And it's just a variety array of what's really showing up and some of this stuff. And not to say that, you know, everyone needs to not be on medication. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that, you know, Kambo is an opportunity to not have to take them any longer. That's the key point here. And there's freedom and liberation from that, you know, you can be in a place of balance finally to not rely on this stuff. And that's the part I really believe like is badass about Kambo. You know, it provides that liberation from not even just an emotional, physical state, like just from feeling free in your mind, you know, from having to rely on something. And including with the addiction that we've talked about prior, you know, you don't have to rely on a substance any longer. Right. You know, it gives you an opportunity to really feel that. And when you do have this liberation, it gives you, it opens up portions in your life to now you can now be present with the things that matter most in your life, which I truly believe is family. Mm-hmm. You know, I think family is medicine to me. And if I can do things to show up for my life and my family, you know, it's a no-brainer for me. So as far as everything else goes, man, I think we're gonna close here. But I know people can reach you at kambois.life. That's your website. Yeah,
there's no .com. You didn't say that, but a lot of people do. So yeah, the website is Kambo, KAMBOIS .life as in Frank. So LIFE. So kambois.life. Email is the same. It's Wolf, and that's WOLF. There's no E. It's not German. It's more my Cherokee lineage. So it's Wolf at kambois.life is the email and the contact. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, and you know, personally for me, I don't serve Kambo that much. You know, because working full-time job in the fire department, it's really taxing on me to serve, but I do it as a means to help people, you know, and I don't serve Kambo for any gain financially or anything like that. This is a method for me to help people, and that's my service to humanity. But if you are curious, you know, you could always reach out to me, you know, through the Grablives podcast and just ask for me and ask if you're curious about Kambo. But by all means, like I had said, it is, I truly believe in this medicine, you know, and it is about helping one another. And I just have such a big, huge heart for the hurting men and women in my line of work. And I want to have everyone feel good in their bodies. I want to have people show up to their families and their relationships at the highest capabilities they can. So that being said, you know, if you're interested in Kambo, I hope we covered a lot of the information that's out there, you know, but one of the things too is like there has been some information about Kambo that I've seen on the internet. So like, don't Google Kambo. I think one of the first things you see is like, you know, Kambo causes nausea, diarrhea, and death. Like that was one of the things I saw on Google, and I'm like, what? No way, man. So the information out there is limited, and I hope that this podcast episode really brought a lot to the surface for people who are interested, and knowing that, like, you know, this is an option for you. I truly believe in treating the PTSDs going on in the epidemic with behavioral mental health within our line of work. This is a serious key point to finding just peace and harmony within and balance in your body and your mind and your spirit and your emotions. So by all means, I'm going to close this episode with our sponsor, Frontline Behavioral Wellness. You know, please reach out to these people. They're amazing in what they treat. I just had dinner with the whole team last weekend, and they're so in tune to helping people, and they just want to offer as much as they can to serving all the first responders. So like I said before in the beginning of the episode, you can reach acerahealth.com and look at some of the stuff that they offer. And they have a 24/7 confidential hotline that's designed just for first responders. If you need help, or if you know someone that has issues at an extreme level, they will get to you right away. And that number is 661-877-7241. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening, and find us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Send us some comments and give us some 5 stars on all fronts. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Bye.